This is the Can Crushers Wrestling Podcast.
The following contest is scheduled for one fall.
Let's go nuts! It's Jimmy Nuts! Right out of the door!
With your hosts, Mark Martinez.
Because I'm the Mark and I'm awesome!
The Guru.
Today I'm going to break it down for all you simpleton sweat hogs listening out there in Can Crusher Nation. I don't mean to come out here week after week and toot my own horn, but toot, toot.
And the English Professor.
It is I, the English professor from the County of Kings, speaking the English of the Queen.
Hey, this is former WWE superstar Duke the Dumpster Drosy, and you are listening to the Can Crushers Podcast.
And welcome back to another edition of Can Crusher Spotlight. Again, the English professor is via satellite in studio. Right, John? How are you?
I'm doing great, and like we said last time, if I'm here, that means it's serious business. And this is serious business, isn't it?
This is serious business that came up real quick. This was, boom, we had to do it, and we're getting it done. Because if you listen to last week's Spotlight, it was with the author of Lance by Chance, the story of Lance Von Erich. Well, my people got in touch with Vinny's people that got in touch with the one, the only, John. He's an enigma that's been out of wrestling, of people's eyes for 30 plus years. Lance Von Erich is joining us on Can Crushers today.
That is correct. This is awesome. This is going to be a great interview. We got some terrific insight from Mr. Berry last time. All I want to do, I think, is maybe dig a little bit deeper, again, without digging too deeply, because we want people to buy the book. Speaking of which, I did read some of all of what you sent me, actually.
Good boy.
It's a page turner. It really is, and I cannot wait to get my hands on my own copy.
Right, and spoiler, John, Vinny said he's going to send you one because I probably dropped the ball when I was telling. So, see, this actually ends up my problem, my fault. But I got the book, and I didn't tell him I should have sent one to you as well. But Vinny's going to take care of it, send you a book.
Nice! So I'm getting my own copy.
You are.
That's awesome.
So, you're going to read it in one day. You're going to read it in one day.
I'm
it's
sure
that damn good. If I can, you read 10 times better than me, so you're going to read it better.
I don't want to say anything. All right. Why don't we hear from Al Snow at Collar and Elbow?
Yeah, sure. Hats, hoodies, tees, amazing wrestling apparel. Can Crushers, all one word, capital C in Can, capital C in Crushers, and you save 10%. Let's get rid of Al, and let's bring Lance in.
Wrestling. A love and a passion we all share. I've started a wrestling brand. The wrestling brand. A brand founded on the aspects of wrestling. Two entities working together to create a product that connect emotionally for people everywhere. Collar and Elbow is the brand. Passion and love for wrestling is the drive. I am Al Snow, and this is Collar and Elbow, the wrestling brand.
And welcome back, listeners. It is I, the English professor, joined by your host, Mark the Mark Martinez. If you guys listened to our last Spotlight, you'll know that we spoke with author Mr. Vincent Berry, the author of Lance by Chance. And we got some great information on what was going on, not just in Portland and Dallas, but all over the world as far as Lance Von's career is concerned. No offense to Mr. Berry, but I think, Mark, we did one better this week because we have the man himself, the subject of the book, Lance by Chance, Lance Von. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on Can Crushers.
Hey, great to be on your show. Actually, I'm sitting here out in Mexico looking at the ocean and my golf course, so weather's great here. I'm guessing it's a little colder where you are.
A little bit.
Yeah, I had snow flurries this morning, so it's definitely a little colder up here in the deep woods of Pennsylvania.
So, Mark, you had a chance to read the book, and you read it in one sitting, cover to cover. I don't know if I should admit this, you may be breaking some copyright laws here, but you snapped some pictures, you sent me some pages to read, and what I read is every bit as good as you said it was. And you're absolutely right that this isn't one of those books where anybody calls anybody out or has a crossword to say about anybody. It is just one man's experience in the wrestling business. And what I read, I thoroughly enjoyed, and I cannot wait to get my hands on a copy of it myself.
Yeah, Lance tells a story, and I told you during the podcast last week that I kind of, broke my heart what they put him through a little bit. So let's bring Lance in some more to talk about this, and we'll get deeper into the book. First, Lance, we've been working with Vinny for a little bit of time, not as much as you. How is it working with Mr. Barry? Because he seems like he could be a handful once in a while, isn't he?
Hey, he sure is. Well, listen, I didn't want to do, I had many people actually ask me to write a book, and funny enough, I don't know why, but Vinny kind of hit me up, and there was something about him that was a little bit different than everyone else, and I said, well, I'll give this guy a shot. And he did really, I think he did a really good job.
He sure did. What were before we tackle the book again, what were your thoughts on the way that he relayed your stories then? Do you think he did complete justice? I mean, you know where we are. Do you think he did complete justice from what you said and how he put it to words?
Oh, I think amazing job. The problem was there's so much information that I gave him. We had to kind of go through and condense it, because it's not only about the book, but it's about what I was able to do after the wrestling outside the country, and a lot of opportunities that came my way, which I would have never had if I hadn't, first of all, wrestled. Maybe things could have come out a little bit different if I had listened in Portland and had done it the way Don Owen had suggested. But anyway, it worked out great for me. I had a fantastic life and still living the life.
Yeah, and that's a great segue for us, because I was going to jump right into Portland right off the bat. You can read it in the book, and we don't want to give a lot of the book away because we're here to sell books for you and Vinny. If you would have stayed in Portland, do you think you would have taken more of Don's expertise and maybe tried to tackle the WWF and see where that went? Or, can you expand on the Portland years a little, 6 months, not really years, more? That, you were gung-ho for WCCW, but did you have any inkling in your mind saying, maybe I should give this Portland and WWF try a try?
Well, what happened was that Don Owen had said, listen, they're going to, like everyone else had told me, they said, listen, if you're going to go to work in world class, they're just going to, use you and abuse you. And you need to stay here in Portland and, learn your craft here, where it's not on a big television, because world class went to the Middle East and, all over. The Channel 39 on the Christian station was big. And he said, listen, you got a really, really good shot at, breaking into Vince McMahon's territory, but you can't just go straight to, being a superstar without learning. And you're going to have a lot of television exposure, and you're going to have a lot of people's eyes on you. So you need to actually, do your time here. And he wanted me there because I was drawing houses.
Right. And Was it good having like Billy Jack Haynes in your pocket right off the bat, since he was kind of the mega superstar up there? You had Steve Simpson and all those guys. Were they really on your side, pushing you for that main event roster in Portland as well?
Yeah, everybody was, trying to give me a push in Portland, and everybody was, working with me. And, quite frankly, I think I would have, looking back, I would have learned a lot more in Portland as well if I just stuck around. There was a lot of good wrestlers that were, coming through there. And I know that Vinny had written about Jerry Gray, who, had the patience and also Sandy Barr to actually work with me. And as much time as I wanted to put in, they would be there too.
Lance, it's John. I wanted to ask you, I've read the part about your meeting with Fritz and your words and the way Mr. Berry put it to paper. You guys really did a nice job of painting the picture there with Fritz smoking 2 cigarettes at the same time and just the short, quick questions. Are you athletic? I could almost hear the words coming from him. Was he as kind of hard-nosed and crusty as he came across on TV?
Yeah, I think he was not too approachable for most people. He did take a bit of a liking to me, but he wasn't, for most people, he wasn't very approachable, and a lot of people are nervous around him. And he really didn't have a whole lot to do at that time with the day-to-day operation. He left it to David Manning and Rick Hazard and Ken. And you only saw him, at least me, only once a week, that I would see him, and sometimes not even that. He lived up in the Sportatorium, and it's kind of funny. I'll never forget, I had friends in Israel, and they actually had come to visit the Sportatorium, and they'd seen the Sportatorium on television thinking that this place is just going to be great. And when they got there, it was a bit of a fire trap dump, and his office was on the second floor upstairs, and there was, the whole office was, even though we knew where everything was, it was just looked like a whirlwind had gone through there, I know that he knew. I knew that he knew where everything was, but if you went up there, it just was old and musty and kind of dirty. I don't know if you'd ever been to the Sportatorium, but not anything what one would imagine that television would be coming out of.
No, we recently, last year at this time, we were part of a WCCW panel at WrestleCade. I don't know if you were asked about this or heard about it, where Mr. Beard, Mr. Manning, Garvin, Black Bart, Eric Embry, a lot of guys along with Baby Doll were all part of it, and they kind of answered questions and everything. And being younger, seeing on ESPN replays, even the WWE Network now, the Sportatorium looked like a little Madison Square Garden. I only found out last year that, like you just said, that it was a hole in the wall. When it was hot, you guys were on fire in the ring, and when it was cold, you guys should have wore blankets in the ring because it was freezing. There was no happy medium with this dump, as everybody's calling it anymore.
Well, and where it was in that part of town was actually in the kind of it backed up to probably one of the worst parts of town of, I guess you can't call that Dallas. And, truly it was a fire hazard. And, I don't know if you ever noticed, but the ropes were very short too. So to work in that ring was pretty difficult, just in the simple fact that it was much shorter than normal. The turnbuckles were short, lower down, and the ropes lower down than most of the other places.
Lance, when we spoke with Mr. Berry, and Mark alluded to this earlier, he mentioned Portland and asked if you would have maybe preferred staying there, and as he put it, kind of got your legs under you a little bit. Mr. Berry had suggested that maybe you had wished you hadn't passed through Dallas at all. Is that a fair assessment? Because in reading what Mark sent me, you did have some nice things to say about people that really helped you out and pulled you aside and wanted you to be better, wanted you to do your best. So is it fair to say, despite how everything turned out, you wish it wouldn't have worked out the way it did?
No, I was saying that looking back, not that I wished it had turned out any different. Looking back, it could have been very different. Me going to the world to WWF and working for McMahon, but I'm happy the way things turned out because, like I said, I got to travel all over the world and actually in the South African circuit, I was actually making more money than I was in Dallas. And I liked it a lot better than Dallas. I like Portland a lot better than Dallas as well. The place itself, not maybe not the just the area. Oregon's beautiful, South Africa's beautiful, so.
Right. Yeah. The landscape, you mean, of the area. Yeah. Was it,
right.
This is the big question because I'm not Mark. I really am Mark the Mark. Was it really the rock star life? I mean, I want to know more about that. If you can maybe give us one story that's not in the book that's, holy moly, this is what I was out doing, on weekends and, without giving anything that you don't want away, but just a big story that's how much of a rock star you guys were in the 80s compared to, some of the WWE guys or WWF back then weren't there yet because World Class was, you said it, was traveling before anybody else was.
Yeah, did you get some of the same treatment Kerry and Kevin and David were getting on their way to the ring with girls pulling them in every direction?
Yeah, and even more so, actually. The only person I think, if you ask the boy, well, there's only one left, but, I got more, I think more attention than any of them except for Kerry. And obviously Kerry, as far as because of his body and everything, and he'd been on television forever. I do know that we were in Israel. When I went over to Israel, which is in part of the book, and I'm not going to give away any of that happened to us in Israel the first time. But when I went, I went the second time to Israel, and I actually did I got there before everybody else, and I actually had 30,000 people at the airport to meet me.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was crazy. And at the hotel that I was staying at, I had people, I'll never forget, I had a woman that actually called me on the telephone and made a trip just to see me. And I actually let her in my room, and she started taking off her clothes, and I was like, stop, and she said, no, I gotta make love to you. And I'm like, and I had a friend that was, I think I talked about him in the book, named Rafi, and I called him and I said, you gotta help me, because this girl was just taking her clothes off, and she just, refused not to leave until I actually said, I've driven 2 hours here to get here, and I'm going to have sex with you before I leave. And she was good looking, but, I just found it kind of crazy. And she's actually she was in a taxi. She took a taxi for 2 hours. The taxi was waiting out there, and Rafi came in and said, listen, he's got something to do. You're going to have to leave. And then she had told me told Rafi, well, he needs to pay for the taxi, because if he's not going to have sex with me, then, I've got to have the taxi ride back paid. So that's just kind of many times that happened in Israel. I mean, not exactly like that, but just many things like that have happened. So yeah, it was, it was crazy. At the same time, it was, I don't know if, and I actually don't even know if I talked about it in the book, but Sylvester Stallone was there at the same time shooting the Rambo movie.
Oh, wow.
And I think that when we were there, we were actually more over than Sylvester Stallone was. We had as many people actually at our hotel trying to meet us as Sylvester Stallone had. So that's the kind of, in certain parts of the world, that's how far, how much we were over.
Your book tells a great story about you being in the ring with Abdullah the Butcher, and you said that wasn't exactly your style. The forks and the bleeding and the biting and everything. Were you just not interested in that sort of thing for health reasons, or you didn't want to mess up the good looks?
Well, first of all, I was wrestling barefooted like Kevin was, and it wasn't because I actually wanted to wrestle barefoot and copy him. It was because I hated putting on those boots. And anyway, so being barefooted, and, that was the very first, at that time, AIDS was just coming out, and, everybody was worried about that, and hepatitis is a big one. And I think that actually he ended up having hepatitis later on in his career. I mean, that's not me, but that's what many people have said over the years, that he had hepatitis, and so maybe still have it. I don't know. But I was always worried about getting, a disease, so I didn't want to cut myself.
Right.
Not to mention, I'm also fairly vain. I don't know if you know who Bobby Jaggers was, or if you look at some of these guys that cut their head, man, it's horrible.
Right. Look at Dusty Rhodes. He's probably one of the best ones. That scar has never healed, until the day he passed.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's another example of him. There's many of them, but Dusty was another one that did that.
So
for me, it just wasn't what I wanted to do.
John talked about Abby. I love the story that you put in about Chris Adams. Chris Adams was one of my favorite heels in World Class. The story that you have in the book where he super kicked the guy in the hotel, and we'll leave it at that as a teaser. Vinny did tell some of the story on our last podcast, but if you didn't listen to it, man, you got to read the book or listen to the podcast.
Do both.
Yeah, do both. What else can you tell us about Chris Adams? Because of course, we see him very dignified, in the ring, and then a little bit crazy when he turns heel, with my air quotes. But what else can you tell us about Chris Adams that, that story was a shocker to me?
Oh, well, Vinny, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, did we, I don't want to give too much away, but, I was also on a airplane that kind of was hijacked, and that has to do with him. So you'll have to read part of the book to actually, or read the book to hear about that. But that has a lot to do. Chris was in that story, and it had a lot to do with him as well.
Wow. Okay. Now I really can't wait to.
He was a good guy. I like Chris. The only problem with Chris was when he got too much alcohol in him. He just wasn't the most pleasant person to be around.
One more story about the book that Vinny actually gave away, Lance. No, Vinny's going to smack me over the phone with that one. But he read the passage about you meeting Ric Flair in Portland and you meeting him again later. And then what he said, kind of the whole, World Class is going to work the hell out of you, more or less. Did that sink in at that time when Flair told you, or did you go back years later and say, damn, Flair had this pegged to a T? Did you give it thought right then and there, is what I guess I'm asking you.
No, it hadn't really dawned on me. I was, quite frankly, I don't have anything bad to say about any of those people. I was pretty close to Kerry. The rest of them, not so much. And, I don't have a lot of good memories of that time. And I really don't, I kind of pushed that out of my mind, because it wasn't like I grew up wanting to be a wrestler. That wasn't the idea at all. It just happened to be I was at the wrong place at the right time, I guess, or actually, the right place at the wrong time. I don't know. But everyone told me that. It wasn't only him. It was, Billy Jack Haynes. It was anybody that's, the Road Warriors. Many people were like, you don't know what you got yourself into, or you're getting yourself into. It depends on where I was in the whenever I was where it was in my career, and people were like, "Oh my God, you're just going to end up." And I did. I ended up working. Nobody seems to remember this, but I was wrestling twice a day. Sometimes I got on an airplane and worked one town and got on an airplane to actually work someplace else. So I was working twice as much as everybody else. And what killed me was, I had a really good body when I first started. And then I don't know if because if you watch the television, my body got worse and worse because I just didn't have time to work out.
Your body today is better than ours has ever been, so we can't compare at all. So you're in amazing shape. So we're not going to talk about bodies, that's for sure.
Well, I meant when I was wrestling, because
right.
I'm in better shape than I was for sure back then.
Right.
Much better shape, actually, than when I was wrestling. At that time in the States, actually.
One of the misconceptions, and it's put to rest in the book, that once Fritz came out and broke kayfabe, that you had already signed with the rival organization, and you wanted to, put it to Fritz and the Von Erichs. It's touched on in the book, but I want you to get your piece, right now, if people don't buy the book and they're only listening to the podcast, to put that to rest, to say that wasn't your doing, that you were going to put World Class down just because you still wanted to wrestle and work a little bit, right?
No, I think that what they were afraid of was that I was going to go to the WWF. In reality, that's what they were afraid of. And, if they would just have let things alone, I would have just sailed off into the sunset and be done, because I had no desire to actually bring any, to expose them or anything. And the funny thing is, the kayfabe is, what they did is crazy, and I know that a lot of the fans got upset, but if you look at wrestling as a whole, and everything, it's all kayfabe. It's all fake, and it's all somebody's cousin or brother or whatever, and they never said anything about anybody else. It's just the Von Erichs, and even that, it just amazes me that, that the fans would get mad at that.
That was another point that I wanted to bring up. The Junkyard Dog's not a dog. Iceman Parsons. I mean, everything has that kayfabe still in it, even to this day, even though they say, kayfabe is dead. But why do you think it was all thrown on you?
Because at that time the Von Erichs could do no wrong, and I just think that people wanted to believe in them so bad, even though for the instance, how David died, the way it was presented and what's really so, it may not necessarily be the same, and they believed how they betrayed it, what happened.
Right.
So I think they just wanted to believe in them so bad that, they a lot, it's bubble gum for the eyes. That's what it is. Wrestling as a whole. And that doesn't matter where you're at during that time anyway, it was what it was. People watched it because it was entertainment, but they, I remember people arguing, well, it's all real. I mean, some of them believed that everything that they saw was real.
I asked Mr. Berry this the last time, and I'd love your perspective on this. Kevin Von Erich has made it clear then, continued to make it clear, he was at the very least apprehensive about Lance Von Erich, his cousin coming into WCCW. Did anybody ever approach you before, after, during? Because Mark and I have met a bunch of wrestlers, and obviously they change nationalities, they change names, and we see them now. Are you really so-and-so's brother? Are you so-and-so's cousin? Did anybody ask you? Did anybody put you on the spot back then, or blow your cover or anything like that?
No, actually, maybe one time somebody had said something, if I remember correctly, are you really, because they had known the Atkinsons. Well, and their real name's not even Von Erich. Actually, I'm closer to Von Erich than they were. You want to know the truth? I mean, at least my first part of my name was Von. So, these people had gone to school with him, I guess, and they said, "Are you really their cousin?" And because we've never heard of you before, blah blah blah. That's the only time that ever happened.
Wow.
And I guess the fact that if they're even as go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, even Kevin, he says, I guess now, I haven't talked to him since I left, and when I left, I was just done. I just, I'd had an injury. Lord the Barbarian had thrown me or dropped me, and I had a shoulder injury, and I took the time off, and then I just didn't want to go back. I had enough. Nothing, I can't say anything bad about the Von Erichs, and if I'd stayed in there long enough, made with the Von Erichs, then maybe I would have, because obviously they all they all died, so maybe if I'd stayed in there, everything would have worked out for me. I don't know, but, with World Class, but I don't think they did very well. They got, they kind of, they actually had such a good thing. They could have been bigger than McMahon if they'd just done things a little different.
Yeah, we've often said that on the show, talking about World Class. If it was maybe a marketing strategy or more storylines, because we've always said it was the Von Erichs against the rest of the roster. There was no developing anybody else.
Right, and it's true. And they just kind of, they would beat one person up, get rid of them, and somebody else would come along. And a lot of people didn't want to go to the territory because they knew that that's what's going to happen to them. And it's really a kind of shame because truly they could have been where Vince McMahon was, and they were, they were actually in a lot of the world. They were actually bigger. It was the TV that went out of Lebanon just went all over the Middle East, and they could have really done something. But it is what it is, and it's the way it happened. And, for me, I have no animosity towards them, other than the fact, if they had paid better, that was another problem that they had. They just couldn't pay enough. If they'd paid better, I think they would have kept talent around, as well. But it was just difficult for them. They could have traveled, in other parts of the world and actually done shows, but I think that Fritz kind of knew, he was used to, to the area there, and he didn't really want to go anywhere else. We did a few shots up into New York, and we pulled some good houses. But, when I started, I remember the first big show that I had done, it was huge. And then thereafter, they just got smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, McMahon's was going the other way. They were drawing bigger and bigger and bigger crowds. So, we kind of saw, by the time that I did leave, the houses that we were drawing they weren't big.
It's interesting you mentioned New York. I was just watching one of their DVD compilations today, and one of the shows you guys did, one of the television shows, Channel 11 maybe, or 39, eventually became a satellite channel and was doing bigger numbers, better ratings in the New York City area than WWF programming was.
Yeah, that was Channel 39.
Yeah. Wow.
It's amazing you remembered that, John, because you barely remember anything.
I just watched it today, so that's why I remembered. Switching gears just a little bit, you talk about Puerto Rico, the World Wrestling Council, and working for Carlos Colon. And in the book, you say how it was kind of the same mentality, only it was just one Carlos Colon as opposed to 3, 4, or 5 Von Erichs. Was there anything in that regard then much different? Was it any better? Did you enjoy it anymore?
Look, the thing with Puerto Rico was that when I went over there, I actually was shooting I wrestled 9 times in, 3 days. So they shot a lot of television. The difference is, that they pull, meaning they shot a lot of television in 1 or 2 days. So they would shoot 3 months of television in a couple of days. The difference is they were pulling big houses. The crowds were, really big in Puerto Rico, and they're diehard fans. We filled stadium. Where we wrestled, at least where I wrestled, everywhere we kind of sold out. And quite frankly, in South Africa, I was drawing houses bigger than world class.
Yeah,
making a lot more money, even with the exchange rate. Because the rand to the dollar, is not that great actually.
You talk about South Africa and overseas a lot at the tail end of your book here, and can we say that this is actually where you became a wrestler and you enjoyed it? This is where the stress was off you, and you, as much as you enjoyed wrestling, because you in your book say you were never a wrestler, but this is where you really blossomed, right?
Well, yeah. Not only that, it got me. Television, national commercials. It got me a lot of television work, soap opera, movies. A lot of different things that, if it'd been in the States and I had that, I would have been making, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. In South Africa, you can live off of it, but you're not going to get wealthy because it's a small, it's a lot smaller country. But it was very good. And, I opened health clubs and I got a lot from that. So, yeah, and I could pick and choose where I wanted to wrestle. If I didn't want to wrestle, then I wouldn't go. And if I did want to wrestle, I could wrestle as much as I wanted or as little as I wanted.
Is there one city that no matter what was going on, you wanted to make sure that you were there? Was there one big city that you loved?
Yes. It's not a city, but it's I don't know if you ever remember during the apartheid, I don't know how old you are, but the apartheid, before 1992, before Nelson Mandela became, president, the community in South Africa, in the States, had actually done a song called "I'm Not Going to Play Sun City."
Absolutely,
It had all the famous people. And actually, it's kind of a catchy song. Well, anyway, that's one place I really like because, it's not really in South Africa, but it's a place where it's kind of like Las Vegas of South Africa. So, the weather's always good there. A lot of holiday people, the Kruger National Park, the game reserve's right there. And so we would always sell out the stadium there. And so I always wanted to be on that. And then in my hometown, Cape Town, I always wanted to do the Good Hope Center, and we always pulled really big crowds. And because I was the local South African representing South Africa, those people, would come out and support me. There was myself and a guy named Donnie Fulkus that were the two top baby faces there. And he's actually, I just got a email from a friend of mine that said he's actually in really bad shape. He had a stroke, and he's been, kind of in a decline. Actually, matter of fact, most of everybody that I wrestle with either dead or, down and out. There's very few people that I know that were in world class. I was just the other day thinking how many people that I know that are actually, either dead or, I saw one guy that I used to wrestle with just got his leg cut off because he had diabetes. So I had a picture of him in the hospital bed. He's a friend of Dusty's of mine, and got his leg cut off. So I was thinking how much tragedies happen to, especially the world-class guys.
Yeah, and you actually noted that in the tail end of the book, you listed a bunch of people that had passed, and yeah, it's. Do do you think getting out of, and I know you had a lengthier career than many people remember or know, but do you think getting out early on then kind of saved you, keeping you in the great shape that you're in as well?
I probably, in reality, I don't know if I'd be alive if I had stayed there, in Dallas. Truly, because I was around everybody that did, not to mention names, I won't, but, everybody was, they were taking pills to go to sleep, taking pills to wake up. They was, snorting cocaine or methamphetamine to get going, and when you're around that all the time, it's like, and, everybody, not everybody, but many people took steroids too. And I've always taken steroids over that whole time. Anybody that says they don't, that has a decent body and wrestling's probably lying to you. But anyway, so you just got used to it. And I mean, almost everybody. There's very few exceptions that didn't do, drugs. And so, yeah, I was thinking about that. I don't know if I would have actually been alive.
You had talked about the passion of the fans in Puerto Rico, and how you never really experienced some of the things you describe in the book as far as like, the cups of urine getting thrown at you or anything because you were the good guy. Did you experience anything somewhat similar? Was there anybody who just maybe didn't like Lance and wanted to try him on?
Never.
No? Well, that's
Never.
good.
No. I think that maybe as I've gotten older that I'm less likable, but there was very few people that I didn't get along with in those days. I just can't remember any. That even I had a problem with. Maybe they didn't like me and they were really good at, hiding it. But I think everybody was pretty much, that I've wrestled with or spending time with, they wouldn't have anything bad to say about me, I don't think. Maybe Kevin, because I think he would be, I don't know, but I'm guessing he was hurt that they thought they gave me such a golden ball, that they were doing me such a favor by putting me into that. And so I'm sure they felt betrayed, that I just, that I just wanted to just walk out and leave. So I'm guessing that, and I don't have any animosity towards him at all. I don't dislike him. I wasn't close to him, but, I'm guessing that's probably where a lot of that came from. And also some of the fans that were, hurt, because they wanted to see me do good, but then, the way that I left it, they portrayed it. They felt, they felt that I betrayed them. And I've had people like me, because I'm a very private person, and so, but I've had people that have, sent me Facebook, and just said, hey, listen, we watched you, we were really upset that you lost, but now we kind of understand.
Switching gears from wrestling a little bit, you're very business savvy. When you go to open something, it exceeds instantly. Where did you get your business knowledge from? Vinny read a passage as well about how your mom starved you, and then you would more or less, let's call brass tacks here. You used your South African coin to steal Snickers and everything, but when you went all in, you were all in on every business. Where did you get that, the gumption and the passion for everything that you did? Because you didn't leave no stone unturned.
I just think that whenever, I'm just not lazy, and I think that if you put in hard work, whatever it is, just if you put in enough time, you're going to be successful at whatever you do. If you like what you're doing and you put enough time into it and you work harder than everyone else, you're gonna do well. My lady here that lives with me here in Mexico, we live in a little town that's 4 hours, from Cabo, and it's amazing because in Mexico, very hard workers, but in this town, they take a siesta from 1 to 4. And on Friday, when people should come back after lunch, they don't. They actually just stay off the rest of the day, and then they miss Saturday and Sunday because it's the weekend, and then maybe you're lucky and they come back on, Monday at 4 o'clock and go back to work. And, my lady was telling me, she said, we should put business in here because if you just stay open, and run it right and give a good service, you're going to make money.
Right.
With whatever you do here. And it's just because people just, they just want to get by. They're not going the extra mile. And, I've been in sales for many years. And same story. I don't think I'm any better than anybody else. I just work harder.
That's great advice. It really is just the way you said it. It's just work hard and you'll succeed in whatever you do instead of just half-assing it through life, right?
But you have to also like what you're doing because there's nothing, if you don't like what you're doing, no matter how much you try to fake it, you just put in the time. If you just don't like what you're doing, and what I've found is a lot of Americans, that I've met here in Mexico, they do a job that they hate, and I would say 70% of the Americans that I speak to here, I'm in the hotel industry now, but 70% of the people that I talk to just don't like the job, and I can't imagine going to work hating your job.
Well said.
Once again, Mark, you blew through the book in one sitting. The pages you sent me, I blew through them right away. One of the things I think we got out of it were the stories. Again, there's really not a crossword to be said, at least in anything I've read so far. If you were a wrestling fan, Mr. Berry tells some great stories just about the matches and some of the things that were going on. Lance, what's something you hope readers will get out of this book?
I think a couple of things. That what you see, and what you're watching on television is not, it's entertainment. It's not, you have to, whatever you see, you can't believe, it's entertainment. It's bubble gum for the eyes, and it's not easy. It's these people to put on shows are, there's some of them are driving 9-10 hours. They get there and they go to the dressing room, they put on their kit, they wrestle for 15 minutes, they wait until everybody's done, and they're driving 9 or 10 hours back. So it's not easy. And people that watch should appreciate that, they're the people that like wrestling, obviously, because they're going to the wrestling matches. But these guys are entertainers, and they're, they give up a lot to put on a show. And most of these people, not all of them, but most of these guys are second-generation wrestlers, and that's all they wanted to do. So I think that, there's a story behind the story.
Yeah. So do you think that this book coming out now that you and Vinny wrote together and collaborated on, is this the final farewell of Lance? I know you said your wrestling career is over in the book and everything, but could we see Lance maybe popping up now at like a signing or something like that? I mean, is that something that maybe this book is going to lead to, or this is the end all tell all, I'm out of wrestling?
I don't know. I never thought I listened to you. I've never listened to a podcast. I've had many people write me and say, hey, listen, we'll pay you to come to, I don't know, wherever, and you can, and I've never had an interest to do a podcast either. And I listen to you guys, and it's Mark, right?
Mark, yep. Mark and John, yep.
Yeah, okay, well, but I'm speaking to Mark.
Correct.
Okay, so I don't know. It was kind of like Vinny. I mean, many people had, contacted me and wanted me to write stuff, and I just didn't do it. And I told Vinny when I listened to your podcast, and I just thought you did a really good job. And I said, Vinny, and he's asked me. asked me, like, I don't know, Vinny, how many times you asked me to actually do a podcast?
About 4 or 5.
Yeah, 4 or 5 times just recently, and I didn't want to do it. And when I heard you guys, I said, you know what, I'll do it. I don't mind. And I called him and I said, I don't mind doing it with these guys. And I don't know why. I just thought you did a really good job.
Nice.
Thank you.
Mark, we are over with Lance Vaughn.
I hope so.
Yeah, you will. Well, don't get carried away. You're not over, but you did a good job.
All right.
See, you always go too far, John. Always too far. Lance, we'll open it up now. I mean, I ran through my question. Is there anything else you want to, tell everybody about the book, about how you want to throw Vinny under a bus once in a while? It's opened up to you now. That anything the floor is yours.
Look, just to tell you, it's not a book just about the wrestling. It's about my journey, in the wrestling, outside the wrestling, and on the way. I've lived in 8 different countries, and worked in 8 different countries. And, I've been to 120 countries. And, it's little stories. I mean, I wish I had time, because I would think of something, and Vinny would say, oh, yeah, but we just got too much stuff. We got to kind of, whittle it down, and, stories with some celebrities in California and just different things that, I was, bombed on a train in India, and we talk a little bit about that, and just some things that happened, and there were so many of them that I, along the way that I would have liked to tell, but you only have, you don't want to make a book that's, 2,000 pages. You don't want to write a book as thick as War and Peace, so you just kind of got to figure out what you can only give so much information, and you can try to figure out what, is relevant, and, save the other stuff for the second part of the book, or second book. So Vinny, get ready for another 2 years.
Yes, I was just going to say, so that's a spoiler here on Can Crushers that Vinny's got to get his writing utensils back out, because he's been slacking on you, Lance. He really has. Let me tell you, this guy, he's talking to me more than promoting books right now, buddy. I'm kidding.
Yeah, imagine. Well, we're going to do he doesn't know it yet, but we're going to do a fictional book too. So he's got to get ready for that as well.
Nice. Lance, anytime you want to come on the show and leave Vinny, I don't know, at a bar somewhere in Texas, that's fine. We'll welcome you back anytime. But I know you're a busy man, and we want to, respect your time. So, again, thank you for coming on Can Crushers. Vinny, thanks for setting this up. We had a blast. And parting words, Lance? Parting words to anybody?
No, just want to thank Vinny for taking the time, because I know I'm not the easiest person to get along. Well, not to get along with, but as I've gotten older, it's a little more difficult to spend 2 years and writing a book and calling somebody every few days. And so I think he did a really good job, and thanks for putting up with me, because there was a couple of times that. I kind of wanted to say, enough of this. He kind of hung in there. So kudos to him. He did a great job. I really do think he did a great job.
Oh, his head's getting big now.
No, well, it was.
You're not crying.
You know what?
Not crying, are you, Vinny?
No, I'm not. I'm not crying. But the Kleenex is close. But hey, there was times that. I felt like throwing in the towel too. But it's like, this was the first time for me. And here's the thing is that, I've known a lot of people throughout my life that said hey, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to write a book. And you see them 2 months later and, hey, how's the book coming? I'm not doing that anymore. And I get it. I mean, I totally understand why people don't finish their books. It's a long process. And it's an exhausting process. And, but, going back to what Lance said too, it's like, you got to love what you do. And, I'm really glad that I stuck through with this project. And I think there was, just just this process of calling each other, it was exhausting for me too. You know, like to hear him say, I don't know if I wanted to keep on doing this. And I felt like that too. You know, I was like, oh man, this is the set time that, you know, I mean, cause it's a long process, you know, but there was a point that I got to in the book, because after we got all the interviews, like a bulk of the interviews, there was I didn't write for like 9 months. Like I just didn't know. I was trying, but I didn't know how the story was going to flow. Right. And then I got it to flow, and I knew there was some point that I knew I was going to finish the book, you know, where there was a time where I didn't know. And I remember I told my wife one day, we were having breakfast, and I said, you know what? The pipe dream is over. This thing's getting published. And I knew it. And I knew it was going to get done. And so, you know, to see the finished product, it feels pretty good. And Lance, I'm really glad that you did stick with me, because it, you know, you shared, you got honest with me. A lot of people told me about, wow, you know, he's very honest. You know, he doesn't hold back. And, you know, I think that makes a good book when somebody opens up like that. And, you know, you were willing to trust me with this project, and I'm glad you did.
Well, $150,000 retainer was, you know, it was a help too, you know. So.
Nice. Now we're getting to the dirt of the book. Now we're getting to the dirt of the book that we enjoy about.
Money's always an incentive, yeah.
Right. All right, gentlemen. Again, thank you for spending some time with us tonight. We had a blast, and again, both of you always welcome on the show. Thank you. There's nothing else I can say. This means a lot that you came on Can Crushers to promote your book and tell us some silly stories about wrestling and Vinny.
Well, and read the book, because have your people read the book. It'll be well worth their time. I really do think that, not because it's of me, but I read it, you know, like when it was being put together. And if it wasn't about me, I would have read the whole thing. You know, I did read the whole thing in one shot. And for me to read something all the way through in one shot, it has to be fairly interesting. And again, that's not because of me. It's just the way you wrote the book.
My wife said the same thing. She hasn't seen me read in 35 years, so she was shocked that I read the book on Monday, all by myself.
Okay.
And I would just encourage everybody to go to the website. Go to www.lancebychance.com and order your copy. You won't be disappointed.
Mark, we have interviewed some heavy hitters in the wrestling business, and today was certainly no exception. Lance Vaughn with some terrific stories today, not just about Dallas, but, geez, all over the world. I mean, this guy's been everywhere.
Yeah, what did he just mention? Like really 120 countries?
Something like that, yeah. 122 countries or something like that, yeah.
Living in about 9, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well-traveled human being. I mean, imagine having the globe of the world. You could put those stickers on like people on RVs. You know, Lance can just cover up the globe.
He would cover up the whole thing. Yeah, he certainly would. Again, I want to reiterate, I know I've said this, what you sent me, what I read was so good. And now I simply can't wait to get my hands on a copy. Obviously, you mentioned I have my own copy, so coming my way. So it's good to know people. This is great. This is one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, is joining you on this podcast.
I agree. And it's going to change your life. No, Lance, though, man, he's such a... Can I say humble? He's such a humble human being that he just told a story. Still, I want to, say this over and over again. Never throwing shade at anybody. Yeah. Just, hey, this is how my life in professional wrestling turned out, and I want to share it with people. Without giving away in the book, he says he wasn't a wrestler. He did stuff to get to his next step. and he announced it. He's very successful in Mexico right now.
Yeah, he seems he has been very successful in anything he's put his mind to. So aside from wrestling, guys, you heard it. He's got some great advice. Love what you do. Give it 100%, and maybe good things can follow. It was great to talk to him. It really was. And Mark, again, you mentioned the book talks about his life in wrestling, but it also just talks about what was going on in wrestling at the time, which is so much fun to read in and of itself. It'll bring back great memories, guys. And if you didn't know the stuff, it'll be intriguing. It'll be enlightening. It's an enjoyable read.
And we're over with Lance Von Erich.
Easy. I tried that, and he told me to take it easy. So,
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm over. Maybe is what he meant.
Maybe. Yeah.
So
yeah. I rub people the wrong way. So maybe it's me.
Yeah. Remember, John, just because you're trash doesn't mean
you can't do great things. It's called a garbage can, not a garbage cannot.